Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Today, on this crisp November day here in Austin, I am joined again by our guest co-host for the month, Brent. How are you doing? What is going on, Brent?
I am doing fairly well. I have no complaints. I've moved my light this time, so the lighting is much nicer in the background for everyone viewing in the future.
Yes.
And I feel in good health here in France.
Oh, that's wonderful. Brett and I have been on the phone so far for 90 minutes today. I've had an absolute blast talking to you about what life is like running an agency. We were talking about that. What's it like managing clients? We've been talking about Amazon PPC updates. And we probably should have hit record in the beginning there. There's probably a lot of gems that we could have shared.
Oh, we did write some things down at least.
We wrote some things down, and hopefully we get to them in the next few weeks. So again, in case you missed last episode, I'm going to do my part to pump you up, Brent. Brent is one of my favorite marketers in the Amazon advertising world. He's one of my peers. We've been talking about what life is like running a company with PPC services in it for years, and you are the founder of the Amazon advertising agency AMZ Pathfinder, which does, it really meshes well with our sort of jungle animal theme that we have going over here at Ad Badger. Unfortunately, I actually don't think badgers live in a jungle. I think they live in forests.
More forest animals. Yeah. Less temperate, more deciduous, I guess.
The forests of North America and the desert, the savanna of Africa, where the honey badger lives. So I think we need to hire a nature consultant to help us out with where the badgers live. So I'm really stoked about today's topic. And this topic is half public service announcement. It is half experience share, and it is half just gosh darn good advice to help you improve your campaigns. There's all kinds of people out there, Brent. People that make decisions, we might not understand why they make them. Maybe it's people that, I don't know, don't wear their seatbelts. Or maybe it's people who... I don't know. I can't think of many good examples. I want to say
don't like ice in their drink in the summer.
Yeah, that's right. Don't like ice.
One of those people. I don't know who they are.
Can I have a warm iced tea, please?
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of people out there, and one thing that we're going to be talking about are people in the Amazon advertising world who do not use negative keywords. So Brent, this is actually really interesting because I've had experiences with people where they brought up that they don't use negative keywords. And I mentioned this offhand, and you also mentioned it. And these people are not, these are professional Amazon marketers. I've heard this from. Yeah. I've heard this from a lot of different people. When did you first hear about this, that people don't use negatives?
It must be at least 3 years ago now.
Really?
Yeah, a long time ago. Yeah.
And in what context did this get brought up? Like, how did this get brought up?
It was initially, the first time I heard about this was probably with a call, on a call with a prospect or someone we were like angling to work with or talking to and kind of getting a feel for how things are managed. Because one question we always want to figure out, ask, find out the real details on is, who has managed this account so far and what has been their approach? What's been their mindset? What's been their methodology? And sometimes people have really, really great systems in place and, we can come in and build off that quite easily. And other times they do things that are a bit puzzling. I think this would fall into category number 2. So it came up during one of those conversations where the person, I don't remember their name or even the account, but they had said, we just don't add negatives because we're worried about, X, Y, and Z reasons. I guess we'll get to those.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. I first heard it about a year ago. I was actually interviewing someone for a position to work at Badger and manage campaigns. And I asked them the question, what would you do with an underperforming broad match keyword, just basically a broad match keyword that's just not performing well. And I was waiting for them to say, bid optimization and add negatives. And because it's a broad match, you're showing up for dozens or potentially hundreds of different things, just all kinds of different things. So I was, you need to bid optimize it, and you need to look through that list. And it just like didn't register. Like I was like, okay, so after bid optimization, would you do anything else? And this person just doesn't add negatives. And since then, I've heard it multiple more times over the last year. So we sort of wanted to address that and talk about why it is a good idea to add negatives. And sort of, you had some experience too with, having a conversation with why, when people that you were talking to that don't add negatives, what their reasoning was. And I thought it was a pretty interesting reasoning.
Yeah, so folks who express this opinion, this viewpoint, the primary reason that stands out in my mind was they were scared of, by setting a negative, they were going to send a signal to the platform, in this case Amazon's ad management, ad bidding platform, that they aren't relevant for something. So that's essentially, you're saying we don't want to show up for this. So their, I guess, extension of that thought, of that belief is we don't want to teach Amazon something that isn't true because we are relevant for this particular word. Let's say they're blocking a relevant term, but maybe the ROAS on that is really poor and they're doing poor on it from a ROI perspective. But that was their main rationale.
Yeah, I've seen that. That happens a lot. You look through the search term report and you have a relevant term. So like, let's say I'm selling running shoes and the term is durable men's running shoes, for example. So they like that term, it's relevant, but let's say it's got $50 of ad spend, $100 of ad spend without a single order. So it's relevant, but metrics-wise, it's just not performing. So in a situation like that, people that don't add negatives would not negate that word. Instead, they would continue bidding on it, but just give it a low bid to send a signal to Amazon, hey, I'm relevant for this. I'm just bidding nice and low. That is the belief of why some people don't add negatives. So that it's just not converting. They spent a whole bunch of money on it. So does that mean, Brent, that same person would, or, I don't know if you asked them this, but would they have added a negative if it was irrelevant, meaning it had $100 in spend without an order? In a situation like that, would they go ahead and negate it?
That's a good question, because I tried to put myself in their shoes and try to imagine what mindset they're bringing into this, which is always, difficult to do if you have such a set way you think things should be done, to kind of empathize and turn that around. But my sense is maybe they would pause those instead of adding negatives. And maybe we're talking about like an exact match term, but maybe if they're doing a lot of mining in their search term reports and really doing a dedicated analysis of what's in there, they may have this belief that, it showed up for a term that I put in and it's close-ish. Maybe it's not directly relevant. So what I'll do instead is just put that to 2 cents. That's usually the example that's given in the Amazon world, because in sponsored products, I believe 2 cents is the lowest you can go. So they're going to say, I want to be in the auction room, but I'm going to be at the back of the room with my hand up like this, and I'm not going to be yelling, $400. I'm going to be yelling 2 cents like this. So it's a very passive approach to bidding on a term. But I don't know the definitive answer, but that would be my guess, is they would still want to lower it.
This fits into a entire world of, superstitious PPC optimization or superstitious or sort of conspiracy theories.
Magical thinking.
Right. I've talked about this on the show. I think a good example of it is aged campaigns I like better than brand new ones. Like if I had to pick, should I be optimizing an existing campaign or should I just nuke it and create a brand new one? I try to opt to keep the old one and improve it as opposed to nuking it. The only time I would ever nuke it and create a brand new one is if it's really bad, and it's actually been sending bad signals of like bidding for keywords that weren't relevant and all those different things. So that's a superstition. Amazon, and the reason I call it sort of a superstition or just sort of habit, and I think that one is so common, it's sort of best practice. The idea of aged things versus brand new things is simply because you start a new keyword somewhere else in your campaign with the same product that it was, but just because it's new, it's like takes some time to ramp up type thing. And the reason it's sort of like unofficial is because Amazon hasn't said and confirmed this. So it's this whole category of things where it's sort of unconfirmed, but happens enough to see that it's best practice. People that don't use negatives, I don't think there's good evidence to not add negatives. I don't necessarily agree with, you want to be in the auction room, so you want to bid nice and low, so you're not spending money on it because it's not profitable. I actually believe you are sending a bad signal by doing that, in the sense of if you have something that you're bidding on and you're getting impressions but maybe not clicks, and you aren't pushing it and you aren't optimizing it, and it's just sort of this old stagnant keyword. I would actually think that's a negative signal, because the reason it got there to that 2-cent bid is because it wasn't performing well. So by continuing to have that historical data for that keyword that has not been performing well for a long time, I actually believe that to be a negative signal, and that they're continuing to enter that auction. So it's almost sending a signal like, hey, this hasn't had a good click-through rate, this hasn't had a good conversion rate. Amazon knows this, and they want to serve things that get lots of clicks and lots of orders, a good click-through rate and a good conversion rate. And if this keyword wasn't, and it hasn't been, then I think you're sending a weak signal to Amazon. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree with that entirely. I also think that it looks bad. It's like a health and safety violation. You have all these like low bid keywords just hanging around in your ad groups, and then when you're in there and even a bulk file, you're going to see all these entries for these things. Like, get these out of here. But especially if you're in the actual advertising console interface, you have all these kind of like noise interference, and that's like additional mental load and stress on you as the optimizer, the person involved with it. So I think that there's also that component, however small that is. I think that's also a real aspect of this too.
So we do not believe, and these are two of our separate companies with all of the clients that we have and all the customers we have. We do not believe that it is a good idea to not add negatives, meaning it is a good idea to use negatives. And I wanted to let's get a quick recap of what, when we say negatives, actually are. Alrighty, what is a negative? So a lot of times we will say the word negative keywords. There's also negative targets. So the most commonplace is a negative keyword. Amazon really operates around keywords for the most part. They're still a lot more popular in people's minds than product targeting. So Brent, walk us through what a negative phrase is for keyword-based campaigns.
Sure. Yeah, and I'm not sure if the word targeting will ever really take off like Amazon wants it to, but they want us to call targets for ASINs and keywords. But people still say keywords, and so do we. Right. But to go back to the idea of a negative keyword, because you're not going to have a negative phrase for an ASIN, it just doesn't make any sense. Going back to the running shoes example, I guess if you put shoe in, you're going to cancel out anything that has running shoe, durable running shoe, yellow shoe, shoe for women. All those things are going to be eliminated. And I think maybe one of the things people are afraid of when they don't want to add negatives is that they've added phrase and they mistakenly did so and then ruined a campaign and didn't realize exactly what they were doing. That's one other theory I have in this.
Without a doubt, I've seen that, unfortunately, too much. Especially people that use tools. Sometimes they will set up a negative keyword automation to if something hits, 20 clicks without an order, add it as a negative phrase, which is not really what you want to do, because then you're blocking all kinds of things. So, if maybe running shoes wasn't performing well, got 30 clicks without an order, you add that as a negative phrase. Now, all of a sudden, you may be profitable on men's running shoes and women's running shoes and kids running shoes, but just not running shoes. But when you've added negative phrase running shoes, you just blocked all things with the word running shoes inside of it. So that's a big issue, and I do think that's some of the hesitation. So hopefully this clears it up. Before we get to sort of best practice, negative phrase, negative exact, so conversely, Brent, what is negative exact?
Well, negative exact doesn't leave any room for interpretation. It's the one that we use, I would say, 95% of the time, whereas phrase is used sparingly. And that's just, this is the exact search term that has been entered, and we're going to put that in as a negative, and it'll block that and only that. I think the only exception there would be plurals, right? As we've learned on Amazon, and I'm sure you've done episodes about this, if you have running shoe, running shoes, if you put running shoe as a negative, that is also going to block running shoes, unfortunately, because sometimes the performance does differ.
Yes.
But that's about as open as to interpretation as it can be. Otherwise, it's exact.
Yes. All those people buying one running shoe.
Classic.
Yeah. So agreed. If you are adding negative keywords, most of them are going to be negative exact. Most of them that you see in your search term report, and then you don't like it, so you add it as a negative, should be negative exact. Like that search wasn't performing well, you block just that search. So irrelevant and unprofitable things, you want to add that thing that just was misbehaving badly, and then you put that as a negative exact. So you mentioned about 90% of your negatives are negative exact. Tell me about the rarer use of negative phrasing. When do you use negative phrases?
Great example would be brand. So we typically split out campaigns for brands of our clients in their own areas. That's to segment the spend, segment the results, because obviously those ACoS values are always far lower, typically, not always, but enough that we want to see the breakout and distinction between them. So we use negatives as basically, traffic police. They're just there to clean up that branded spend that might sneak into phrase or broad or more open match types in other places. So that's a great way to just keep that out of there.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I think it's cool to also use negative phrases if you almost like you want to block an entire vein of searches. So let's say I'm selling running shoes, and my running shoes are not made for the track, and they're not made for the trail. I could do negative phrase trail. So that way, anything related to trail running, I would not appear for. So I would do like wholesale blocking of that. That's when I like to use negative phrase. Also, if you notice, hey, I have 6 search terms here. Each one wasn't performing well, but I noticed that there's a common word in all of them. And if you notice that trend, then you would add a negative phrase. So in short, you want to be really intentional about when you use negative phrase. Most of the time, you want to use negative exact. Or like kids, like I sell running shoes, but I don't sell kids running shoes or any product related to children. So I would do negative phrase children, negative phrase kids, negative phrase toddler, whatever. I would block all of those things. Those negative phrases is why a lot of companies use universal negatives. So this would be just terms you would never want to appear for. I know some companies use negative phrase XXX because they don't sell anything adult related. So they just sort of include that just in case they're selling just in case that could come up.
Right. And that actually reminds me of something, which is this shared negative list, which is a feature we do not have in Amazon, but is from the Google world.
Yep.
And we maintain negative lists for some clients because when we build out a new campaign, if you do it in bulk, you can easily add it. Or if you go in the interface later, you can easily add it. And a lot of those seed negatives, which is kind of a strange concept, but they're like the negatives you set up from the beginning.
Yep.
You're just automatically blocking wasted spend that you already from other campaigns have learned is a no-go.
Yep.
And so those are a great example for phrase, because it's hard to predict all the tens of thousands of keywords you're going to get in there and then put them in exact.
Yep.
But if you can do like 5 phrase that will cover a huge swath of things, that's a great start.
Big time. So we've got negative phrase, negative exact, and one reason people don't mess with negatives is because they feel like, hey, I've had a negative phrase in the past and it messed me up a lot. So be sure to use negative exacts most of the time. You want to be really intentional about when you add negative phrases. Within the last, it's been around for, over a year in product targeting ad groups, but we've also have negative product targeting, negative ASINs. And how do these work, Brent?
Well, this is even a separate sub-tab when you're in the actual advertising console interface. And you can add these in bulk, I think, too, like through bulk files, but also as a list you upload. But this is essentially a negative exact, and it's just for ASINs. And actually, an interesting thing I learned just the other day, Mike, the ASINs for books are just like straight up numbers. They don't have letters in them. They don't start with B0. And those can also be added as negatives or keywords. I've had it work recently. I've tried it with an account. So yeah, I mean, that it functions the same. ASINs or book SKUs, whatever. They're just a series of numbers. It's strange.
Is that the ISBN?
I don't think it's the ISBN. It's an Amazon, some kind of Amazon string that's in there.
Okay.
But anyway, not to digress too much.
Yes.
But the idea is you're just negating out a product. So you're not going to be showing up on the product or following this product around, as it were, on Amazon. So it's the same thing as a negative exact, but just for a product, I suppose.
Right. So we've got negative phrases, negative exact words, and then we've got negative ASINs. Now, I wanted to take sort of a quick, almost like we are road tripping across America, and we need to stop and like look out the window and be like, oh, there's Mount Rushmore. We should stop and talk about the behavior of broad match keywords, phrase match keywords, category targeting, automatic targeting. Essentially, all of these things, you're showing up for a wide variety of things. So if you're bidding on, phrase match running shoes, to continue to use this example, running shoes, if you're bidding on phrase match running shoes, you're appearing for men's running shoes, kids running shoes, trail running shoes, running shoes that glow in the dark, running shoes for cold weather, all different kinds of things. You are entering that auction room. And same thing with category targeting. I could target a category, automotive coverings, and then I could appear for all different ASINs inside of that. So anytime you have, and I lump these all into one categorization, broad phrase, category, automatic targeting. I call that research-based or non-exact targeting, because you are bidding on something like the entire category, and that's as refined as you are. Meaning you're potentially showing up for dozens or hundreds of the products inside that category, or if you're bidding on running shoes, you're going to appear for the dozens or hundreds of different searches for probably super high volume single word phrases. It could be thousands of different things. So I refer to this as just research based targeting, where you're just you're planting a seed and it's going to sprout in many different directions. Is there a word you use, Brent, to describe this kind of targeting where you're not bidding on an exact thing?
I think just research would be the way to phrase it. But I also talk to the team and clients about like open match types versus like closed ones. I would call automatic the most open match type. And broad is there, and then phrase, and then, I guess we have broad match modified now too, but there's a spectrum, right? And so the ones that are more open are, I guess, to the left of the spectrum, and the ones that are more exact are to the right, in my kind of visualization of it in my mind.
Mm-hmm. You want to nerd out real quick? A metric that was somewhat popular in Google Ads, the Lin-Rodnitsky ratio. These two guys, Mr. Lin and Mr. Rodnitsky, essentially they have a ratio of how many orders you got from exact match as a ratio compared to how many orders you've got from open match or research-based match. And it's a description of how tight your targeting is. And essentially it's a range. You don't want it super tight where all you have are exact match and ASIN targeting, but you also don't want it so loose that the majority of your orders are coming from things that you aren't actually bidding on that specific thing. Because if you look at a phrase match keyword, you're getting good performance on it. Don't forget that performance is the average of all the things that it's appearing for. So there's an argument to be made that, you know, you're probably overbidding on half the stuff and you're underbidding on half the stuff that you're appearing for. And if you have a perfect bid, it's actually the average of all the performance. So it's a little interesting ratio to describe how tight or loose an account is. So we have these loose targeting, you know, open match, research-based targeting. I think open match is a really nice way to think about it. And when you bid on that, you're bidding the same for all the things that you're appearing for. Now, this is where negatives come in. If your performance in broad phrase category automatic is good or bad, it can be made even better by using negatives. And we've got a whole bunch of reasons here to add negatives to improve performance. I'm ready to go rapid fire down this list. Number one, I think one nice little improvement is you get to reduce your wasted ad spend, meaning you get to find things that are getting clicks, but not orders. Simple. So, you know, when you look through your search term report, you're going to find things that have 20 clicks with no order, 30 clicks, no orders, 40 clicks, no orders. And you're going to be able to identify them and trim them out. And you might also find a whole bunch of 2-click no orders, 3-click no orders that you're like, wait a second, I don't even need to wait for this to go to 30 clicks in order for it to be a poor performer. I can just find it right now. It's irrelevant. So irrelevant, unprofitable things, huge. That's my first reason. My second reason, that money that you were just spending on 30 clicks, no orders, guess what happens to that now? Now it's going to go towards better things. So it's a way to improve your ACoS. You are literally shifting dollars from bad bets to good bets. Hey, you know, you're getting rid of things, 20 clicks, no orders. Now all of a sudden that money that you were spending can go towards things that do get orders. So you're improving ROAS too. Number 3, Brent.
Yeah, sure. So number 3, and totally agree, improve click-through rate. So I think of click-through rate as a leading indicator rather than a lagging indicator, right? When it comes to making assessments in your account. So you can sometimes look at a search term or keyword if it's, you know, somewhat closed match and make an assessment. Is this a pick for us in this account for this product based on the click-through rate we're seeing? And you're also sending a signal to Amazon with click-through rate. So higher the better, right?
Yep.
Would be the thinking. So when you're optimizing your efforts by adding these negatives, you're going to improve your click-through rate. So this is a good leading indicator for, I think we're heading in the right direction here.
Which ties into reason number 4 to add negatives. I firmly believe it boosts your account, keyword, campaign, ad group, all those things, quality score. Essentially, if Amazon could click their heels together, they would make all of their advertisers, they would make all the clicks on their platform paid clicks. Meaning they make money when people are clicking and they make money when people end up buying it. So they'd get it on both ends. And you can see this. I mean, they're sprinkling, they're decorating. I was going to say littering. Instead, I'm going to say decorating all of their pages with more and more ads. This is the trend. This will continue getting that way. And
decorating and redecorating.
Yes.
Because they're changing up the ad slots constantly and
right.
where they show them. Yeah.
So they want their users to click on ads because they make money. And they want users to, not ignore them. So by serving ads with a low click-through rate, ads that people just aren't clicking on, maybe it's not relevant for the search, that is a super negative signal because we're being bad advertisers and we're training people to not click on our ads. So we should have click-through rate in mind. And a lot of this thinking does come from Google Ads, because CTR is a major component of their quality score algorithm. Over on Facebook, engaging with that ad is a major component to performance. So serving ads that people engage with is key. And it is, while Amazon hasn't explicitly said this, there's fairly common knowledge that you need to serve ads that people click on. Back to my point, by blocking searches that have a low click-through rate, you are improving your account's click-through rate. You are improving the keywords click-through rate. You're just being a better advertiser. So big reason to add negatives. Next reason, Brent.
Sure. This is one I like to call traffic police. So imagine you're a cop standing in the middle of the road and she's doing her job waving people left, waving people right. Say, go here, go there, don't go there. Oh, wait, stop. Don't run into that kid.
Yes.
They're going to school. Essentially, the idea here is where can a search term appear that it belongs, right? So branded terms is the one example I gave earlier. We don't want branded terms leaking into our campaigns everywhere and messing up our total results and ending up, draining spend in places where they shouldn't be. We want to focus those down. And this also ties back into the idea of search term isolation, which is something I know you guys are big fans of here at Ad Badger, and we are too. This is a best practice for sure. So these negatives, it's not really about is it a bad click-through rate or is it even relevant? It's more where does it belong? Yep. So maybe you have a super relevant term, but it only belongs in a few places because we want to focus that data down. We want to control that spend. That is the idea behind this. I think this is probably one of the least obvious uses of negatives, and certainly one that we don't see in advanced use when we do audits. Pretty rarely do we see something like this. A good example I'll give might be colors. So you have a blue and a yellow running shoe. Let's go back to those. And we don't really want people to be looking for blue shoes and end up at the yellow one, even if it's the same listing. We would much rather have them click on the product and see the ad that's aligned with what they want directly. And the idea here is reducing friction. We're trying to get them as close as possible to the thing they will actually want to buy or check out. As quickly as possible without additional steps, without additional them hunting and pecking around on their phone or their desktop.
Absolutely. Next reason, relating back to reducing wasted spend, where you're blocking things with 30 clicks, 40 clicks, or 30 spend, 40 in spend without an order, just straight up irrelevance, blocking things that are purely irrelevant, where you're likely you're appearing for it and not getting clicks, or potentially you are getting clicks for it, but then there's maybe a misinterpretation or a difference in the search. A common one is the word bleach. Bleach is both a cleaning product, but it's also a popular anime. I've read this. I don't actually know. That's literally true. I know people say I've literally only heard this example that Bleach was an anime. Anyway, I've talked about it way too long. I need to move on. The point is that it helps you block things that are irrelevant to your product, so that you aren't bidding on things that you are not relevant for, appearing for things you are not relevant for is definitely a negative signal. So this is definitely something you want to trim out. And in short, we have listed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 reasons why negatives are good and why you should do it. So when you are trying to optimize a broad match keyword, not only should you do bid optimization, and you should be bidding what the keyword is worth, not some arbitrary 2-cent bid, but you should also be optimizing those search terms and looking at what you're appearing for and adding those as negatives. So we have a whole bunch of reasons why you should add negatives. And their only reason to not add negatives is total speculation and not best practice. So hopefully now we have demonstrated without a shadow of a doubt that you should be adding negative keywords and negative ASINs. Judge, jury, I rest my case.
I hope we've put this one to bed.
I don't think there's anything else we can say. Negative keywords are perhaps one of the easiest ways to improve your campaigns. It is such low-hanging fruit. It is absolutely positively something you should do. If you're doing this manually, I personally think it should be done weekly, if not more frequently. I'm a big fan of adding negatives. I think it's just so easy. I love it's a kind of thing where it's like you either, a lot of people like, would you rather lose $20 or win 50? Like most people's emotions tie to like aversion to loss. So like they don't want to waste. They like hate the idea of like, damn it, I lost all this money, as opposed to like that emotional spike is way higher than like, hey, I made, a little more. I'm definitely in the camp for better or for worse of like, I hate the idea of wasting money. Like, I can't believe I was spending money on that. I can't believe I was getting impressions on that. So like the whole idea of wasting money, wasting impressions really grinds my gears. So I'm a big fan of negatives.
And that relates to something I mentioned maybe before we started the recording, but this idea of if you take even 20, 30 minutes and do a deep dive on some of your search terms, you can save yourself so much money, and that money can be better allocated towards terms that actually work. Mm-hmm. And so the minimal time investment, which can be reduced even further with good software, of course, is what you're looking at here. And yeah, it might be a bit of a pain in the butt. Maybe you have to do it more frequently if you just launched 7 new campaigns at high spending. But it's well worth the time investment. Mm-hmm. That's money you're going to be able to keep in the business, keep for yourself, or just allocate towards better search terms and keywords.
Boom. That is it. We've rested our case. Everyone out there, do add negatives. If nothing else,
don't be scared.
Don't be scared.
Just because they're called negatives, they're still positive.
Another amazing episode, Brent. Thank you so much. I look forward to the next one. Join Brent and I next week here on the PPC Then podcast, where you can get insight, tips, tricks, strategies, and friendly banter, all to help you improve your Amazon advertising. Have a good one, and I will see you next time in the Badger Den.